Draft sleepers. Draft sleepers, you love them. Draft sleepers are the best, right? They're these players that no one really talks about, but they end up being absolutely great. A lot of times they fall down the draft board, and only a few people guess that they will be really good, and they come out of nowhere, they take the NFL by surprise, and then we look back years later and say, oh man, we could have took this guy. We could have took this guy. Look how many teams passed on this guy. And in today's video, we're discussing a wide receiver. Now, this is a Michigan wide receiver, but he didn't play the 2020 college football season. This is Nico Collins, so let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And as you guys can see, we have the Michigan football jersey. Now, look. I know it's the wrong number, but I thought it would, kind of go well with today's video as we're talking about Nico Collins. Now, as a Michigan football fan, there's only really a handful of players that I really like coming out of this draft. But Nico Collins is the one I'm most excited about because I think Nico's going to be the big sleeper of this draft. I think there's going to be multiple. There usually are. But I think this guy is going to surprise some people. And I just, as a Lions fan, I hope we snag him. But I think someone's going to be really happy when they select Nico Collins. So I'm going to go out there and say that he is my sleeper for this year's draft. At least one of. There's going to be more sleepers. But he is the first one we're talking about. This is episode number 3. Now, let me know in the comment section below who we should talk about next. But let's talk about some Nico Collins. So, Nico Collins, as I mentioned, did not play this season. The 2020 college football season, he didn't play this season. Because of the COVID reasons, we thought the Big Ten wasn't going to have a season. And then it decided, hey, we can have a season. It's just going to be all conference games. But at that point, Nico Collins said, you know what? I already signed with my agent. I'm going to focus on the 2021 NFL draft. Just passed on the 2020 college football season, which could potentially actually hurt his stock a little bit. But I think that just adds even more to the fact that he's a big sleeper. Because I think some teams may forget about this guy. Some people are going to forget about this guy because he didn't play this season. But then when you watch him back at the time he did play in Michigan, you say to yourself, this guy's got all the tools we need. He's got all the tools. He doesn't have the flashy production, but this guy can be great. Great quote from a college scout says this: turn on the tape, watch the tape, because the tape don't lie. All right, you can look at the numbers, you can look at the production, but just watch the tape. The tape won't lie. And if you watch the tape on Nico Collins, I think you can agree with me that this guy can be really good. This guy has the tools to be very good. Statistically, didn't put up any crazy, flashy production at Michigan. As I mentioned, he didn't even play his 2020 college football season, where potentially he could have had his biggest year. He was getting better every year. In his first year in 2017, he only played in 2 games where he had 3 receptions for 27 yards. But then in 2018, he took a big step. 13 games, 38 receptions for 632 yards and 6 touchdowns. And in his final season at Michigan, 2019, 12 games, 37 receptions, but he had 729 yards and 7 touchdowns. And heading into the offseason, he said, there's unfinished business. There's unfinished business with this team. But then he decided to head into the 2021 NFL draft and get prepared for that. So those numbers aren't very flashy. They're not very exciting. You see those and you're like, wow, this guy barely did anything. So his production wasn't great, which again, I think adds to the fact that this is a sleeper. If he's putting up 1,500 yards, a lot of people are going to be talking about him. But the fact is he's not. It's really just the tape. It's the tape that you got to focus on with Nico Collins. He is projected to be a day 3 pick by a lot of people. But there are some scouts out there that believe this could potentially be a pick that's a guy that's as talented as your Jamar Chases, as your Devontae Smith, which is nuts to even think that. And he won't go anywhere near that, I believe, in this year's draft. But in terms of what he can do on the field, he's got a lot of things that he can bring to the table. And one of the things that I like most about this, being a Lions fan, even though this video is for every NFL fan out there, being a Lions fan, knowing we selected Kenny Golladay in the 3rd round out of Northern Illinois, and what he turned into it as an absolute sleeper. A lot of people saw him as a day 3 pick as well. Getting him in the 3rd round, what he has turned into, I wanted to look back a little bit at Kenny Golladay, and you can see that there are some similarities. Some of the biggest knocks against Kenny Golladay, like getting separation, is another knock that you see with Nico Collins. And in the NFL, Kenny Golladay still doesn't get a lot of separation, but he's still one of the best in football, especially, well, when he's healthy, because right now he is not healthy. You look at Nico Collins, one of his biggest knocks is his lack of separation. When it comes to size, they're nearly identical. Both wide receivers, 6'4", 216 to 18 pounds, nearly identical in size. And the 40 time, well, what we heard from Josh Gaddis, the offensive coordinator from Michigan, is that in the offseason, Nico Collins, he ran a 4.4 to a 4.5 40-yard dash, which is absolutely insane because it doesn't always look like he's running that fast on the field. You pair a good combine with this skill set, this guy could actually start going back up the draft boards. Right now, I've seen it kind of all over the place where this guy could land. I personally think, though, if you get this guy past day 2, you stole somebody. You absolutely stole. You committed a felony, okay? That's a problem. It's a problem if you get Nico Nico Collins in day 3. Starting off with the things that I took away that I think he does well. First off, his late hands. This is a veteran wide receiver move. It's the late hands. It's when the ball's in the air and you have a defender that is really watching your eyes, watching your hands to go up and knock the ball away at the last second. It's the wide receiver's ability to have very late hands, to wait till the very last second to get his hands up there to make a play on the ball. It takes a lot out of what the defender can do unless he can see the football himself. If the defender can't see the football, they're very reliant on what the wide receiver is doing. So with late hands, you can make a play on the ball. You can kind of put the defensive player out of the ball. And what's great about this is that Nico Collins, even though he doesn't have all this production or really tons of experience, he's a very, very good deep ball player. He's a go up and get it type of guy. That is his skill set. That's his archetype. He's not a reception. He's not a possession. He's a go up and get it. He's a aggressive wide receiver. And again, as a Lions fan, I would like to say that I think this guy, especially from what we were drafting, when you bring in Marvin Jones, when you go draft a guy like Kenny Golladay, if we lose a guy like Golladay, I think Nico Collins can be one of those dudes that steps in and at some point takes over a very big role on the outside because that is what he does. He is not a guy that's going to give you tons of separation. He's not an absolute burner. He's not the fast guy. He's not super twitchy, but you throw it up to him, he's going to go make a play on the ball, and he's very, very tough, especially on one-on-ones. Why is he tough? Because he's extremely physical. One of the bigger wide receivers in this year's draft. That size is just an absolute problem that you can't teach. He's a very physical wide receiver that can use his hands to bring the ball down, can fight through the contact. One-on-ones are an issue because not a lot of cornerbacks can match up with that size. You don't see a lot of 6'4" cornerbacks out there. So with the size advantage and the physicality that he brings, he can be a mismatch. He can be a nightmare right off of the snap. But what makes him even better is his ability to get separation off the release. Not super twitchy, not the best in short or even sometimes intermediate routes. Doesn't get a lot of separation. He just wins his battles. He has the vertical speed to get deep on you one-on-one. So you land him up with T-Stable, you're going to have an issue. But it's more about the short area quickness he seems to lack. It's like a big muscle car. You know, you get that thing going and it is gone. That top speed is really good. But he's not necessarily one of those quick little, exotic cars that just kind of flying around the track. You know what I'm saying? Makes a ridiculous amount of contested catches. And honestly, he really wasn't with the best quarterback play. The effort that he gives to me is one thing that stands out that I know a lot of people won't mention. But even when he get terrible passes that are completely off, you'll see his effort to dive out. Even if there's no chance you're going to catch it, you do see that effort. And that's something that you always like to see. When it comes to intermediate routes, I don't think he has tons of production there, but he's okay. A lot of times over the middle, sometimes as that late option for Shea Patterson when he's scrambling around. And he does really well working his way back to the ball to give that quarterback that outlet when he needs it. But you're going to see basically no production underneath. I mean, if you're looking for short, quick passes, you're basically seeing nothing here. I mean, they've thrown a couple of screens to him, but that's not your first option. That's not really what you want to go to. It's intermediate and deeper is where he's at his best. You'll get some nice comebacks, some nice out routes, some nice stuff over the middle, 10+ yards. But under that, you're looking at other options because that's not really what he does. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, this isn't a guy for you. I think it's also important to mention the competition that he did go against. I mean, the Big Ten I don't think is the best conference in college football, but it's very tough, and he's had good games against good teams like Ohio State, and he's played against some really tough cornerbacks. I mean, they put out some really good cornerbacks. He's played against some very tough competition. So I don't think it's the best conference, but I think it is some good competition. He's this type of wide receiver to go up and snag the ball, to go take it out of the air, not necessarily just wait for it to drop in my stomach because he knows that, well, with Shea Patterson, he didn't have the most accurate passes, so he had to go and get it. He has to fight to go make the play on the ball, and a lot of times that can even save you because if you get a bad pass, he'll be there to at least knock it down out of the defender's hands. Now, when it comes to blocking, I love his blocking on wide receiver screens. Michigan ran a lot of wide receiver screens, and every once in a while, Nico Collins would be the recipient of that screen, but he wasn't super quick. So he was a lot of times used as a blocker for the quick screens because of his size, and you'll see him against some of the better cornerbacks, even against Jeffrey Okudah, holding up so the wide receiver can get past blocking. It's not easy for a wide receiver to block, especially on a screen. That's a lot of room for a defensive player to make you miss. But that is one thing that he brings. And again, once he gets his hands on you, he's 6'4", 220. It's like a tight end blocking on the outside. Deep ball threat, when you look at his numbers, 14.8 yards per target. 14.8 yards per target, which is very high. And also, he had 12 contested catches, which was 35th in college football. He didn't get a crazy amount of attempts to boost those numbers up. But in only 37 receptions, 12 of them being contested is pretty impressive. In a college game where you see a lot of wide receivers running free, the fact that many catches he has are contested is really impressive. That's just what he does. That's what he does. And again, I think the numbers being lower, I think the fact that he didn't play in 2020 could even add to the fact that he is a draft sleeper. With that size, you have to believe that this guy could be a huge threat in the red zone. I mean, first off, teams love to do, just the simple, straight up, fade it to the wide receiver one-on-one. that could absolutely be a problem with that size. But not just the fades. It's also when, maybe you're 10, 5, sometimes 15 yards out, and you're throwing the pass to the back of the end zone where you got a high point of the ball where they can go up toe tap, and really no one can affect the passes behind the linebackers, that kind of thing. That's another issue. You have to believe that inside the red zone, he could be a problem for defenses. He's pretty much a bully in press coverage. At times, you'll see him line up inside. Not very often. A lot of times he plays on the outside, which again was another knock against Kenny Golladay, is that he could be very limited to the outside. But you line him up and he's pressed man-to-man, he could be a bully. Not usually going to run by you. Sometimes he can get some separation there because he's not slow, but most cornerbacks are going to be able to keep up. It's just that you get him one-on-one and he is a matchup nightmare. When it comes to the thing that he struggles with, as we mentioned, separation. Doesn't get tons of it. But again, Kenny Golladay barely got any separation. Sure, it's great if you can get separation, but if he had every single tool, this guy would be a first-round pick no matter what. The fact is, he's not. Doesn't bring that to the table. Doesn't get a few tons of separation, but he just makes plays. He has great hands. He's just very physical, and he's just tough to match up with because of that size. His production isn't great. Again, never having a 1,000-yard receiving season. Never 40 receptions in a season. Never breaking 8 touchdowns in a season. The production isn't really that great. And no 2020, which could have been his best year statistically, again, could add to him being a sleeper because that really good year could have boosted him up the draft board. Michigan offense, Nico Collins, he only had about 17 to 18% of the receptions in each year as a wide receiver. About 18% of the receptions went to Nico Collins. That's not a ton, right? That means he's not the primary option. He wasn't a number one go-to guy. But with this Michigan offense, they spread the ball around a lot. They had a lot of weapons, okay? They had Tariq Black at the time, but they had Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's now with Cleveland. They had their good tight ends, and obviously they had Nico Collins. They had a lot of weapons. Plus, I don't think this was the perfect offense for trying to go to 1,000 yards because that's not the kind of offense that Michigan and Jim Harbaugh ran. It just wasn't how they did things. So it wasn't like he was getting tons of opportunities. Now, one of his concerns is his drop rate. Yes, his drop rate is below average. That's concerning. He has a pretty high drop rate. But to me, it's not usually routinely catches that he's dropping. It's a couple of factors. First off, he's not getting tons of attempts. So just a couple of drops are really going to make that thing go crazy, right? They're really going to spread that thing out. Also, a lot of his passes are contested, and sometimes when the computer generates, was it a drop? Was it a not breakup? What was it? Those can be a little off, but the fact is a lot of his catches are contested. Let's go back to the lack of separation, of course. But you also had a quarterback that wasn't really doing you any favors. I mean, there was rarely times where Shea Patterson would drop the ball in the bucket for Nico Collins. He would have to go up and make the play on the ball consistently. I mean, think about it like this. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's ended up being a pretty good pick for the Cleveland Browns, I would say, as a late pick. And this guy had lower stats than Nico Collins did in college. His stats were lower than Nico Collins when it came to receiving. It's just the kind of the offense and the system that they're in. But I'm telling you, with the upside, it's the upside to looking for with sleepers, okay? Because, look, you can look at the bad because there is bad. There's concerns. That's why he's a sleeper. But it's the upside. If that upside can hit, you got yourself a steal. But it's less about his top-end speed. To me, it's more about that short route speed. It's about the twitchiness. It's about the elusiveness. To me, I don't see a lot of that. He has tools. He's not slow. He's not walking, but he's just not super quick. But again, at that size, how many quick guys are 6'4"? Not really. If you just have speed though to get deep, which he seemingly does, that's going to be an issue because he's not slow. He's not going to be easy. Not every cornerback keep up. You throw T's table on him, he's probably going to get burnt. So he has good speed. It's just not burner speed. It's not Henry Ruggs speed, but it's good speed for his size. Short route effectiveness. He's not super effective underneath. He's not super effective on short routes because his yards after catch usually aren't that great because he's not super fast in short areas. A lot of times the Michigan Wolverines didn't use him there. They wanted to use his size. They wanted to get him on the outside. So you don't see a huge effectiveness. I think he'd be way more effective in an offense that likes to push the ball, that likes to go one-on-one, that likes to take the outside shots more than he would be on a team that's trying to get everything dragging underneath because, he's just not going to have tons of production there, and that's not where he's at his best. There's plenty of other wide receivers that would be better at that. Probably that'll go around the same time that he does in the draft. And also, he can be a very big threat in terms of what you got to watch for. You get this guy on an island, and you just know defenses have to focus on that size. You line him up one-on-one in the corner, and defenses have to be cautious that, he's bigger than our guy. If we leave him one-on-one, this can be an issue. He's just someone that everybody has to account for because of that size that he brings. One of the most underrated things, and he's actually always talking about it, is his ability to draw pass interference calls. Now, when he's asked about it, he said that it's not something that he tries to do. He just really does it. And again, in an offense-based league where it seems like the league right now with the fantasy, with a lot of calls getting made on cornerbacks where it's really difficult to cover because you really can't touch anybody, it's not too difficult to get PI calls, especially when you're outsized, outmatched. In that situation, when you throw it up one-on-one, he's going to draw a lot of flags. And in the NFL, a pass interference call is usually much worse than it is in college football. This production and what he will look like not having a 2020 season, I mean, that could hurt him in the fact that, is he going to be the same player that we saw in 2019? I felt like 2018 was even better. But he seemed to put up pretty solid production against everybody. It didn't seem like, depending on the opponent, he would have a down or an up game. I mean, you'll see him against top opponents have big games. He went off against Ohio State in 2018. 2019, not so much. He shows up in big games and small games. For me, it's just that he doesn't have the numbers. He doesn't have the production. He doesn't have the exciting blazing speed. He doesn't have the crazy elusiveness. Maybe not even the best route running, which I don't think is bad because you'll see him get some separation on some routes, but he's just not super quick. That kind of thing is not as exciting. He's just not super exciting. But when it comes to, can you bring the ball down? Can I put it up to you one-on-one and you'll make the play? At times you'll see maybe his role may be limited on the outside, but I don't want to say that too quickly because just because your role may be limited to the outside doesn't actually equal a problem. I mean, we did see him at times inside of Michigan, but he's better on the outside. That's where he's used because you don't got a lot of 6'4" wide receivers. Why would you put him on the inside? Leave him on the outside, put him on an island. You get him on an island, and he is tough. His blocking is good enough. I wouldn't say he blocks as well against the run. A lot of times you see him kind of lost, but when it comes to pass blocking on screens, he's had a lot of work at it. So if your team likes to run out of screens to slots, well, you're going to have some help. To me, Nico Collins is a good player. I think he's a very good wide receiver, and I think he's someone that's going to probably go day 3, 4th round, 5th round. But I think if you take him anywhere in day 3, you absolutely stole him. I honestly think he has the potential to be a 3rd round pick. I think a day 2 pick is not a stretch because of the talent that he can bring. There's some major concerns, but I think that just adds to the fact that he is an absolute sleeper. He's the definition of it. That's Nico Collins. But your thoughts, comments below. We'll talk about next. Thank you for watching, and I'm out. Are you kidding me right now? I had to put my helmet on for this one. Are you kidding? Look at this. Look at all these members. What? Yo, hey, shout out to all the members, man. Look how many All-Pro members there are. Like, literally, it's the whole screen, dog. This is crazy. The patrons, of course, the Hall of Fame members, man. Y'all got the gold color. It's kind of yellow, but it's supposed to be gold. Shout out to all the members, man. If you want to be a part of this, all you got to do is join the channel. But there are perks that come with it. Stay locked in the community tab if you are a member because that's where a lot of information comes out. I appreciate all of you. What?